There is a lot going on in the coalition at the moment, or the no-alition, the split coalition, however you want to describe it. This headline just thrown into the mix has certainly sent the cat amongst the pigeons. Joining me live to discuss it is Liberal Senator Jane Hume. Jane, thanks so much for your time. Look, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I think it's certainly noteworthy because I think there is a gendered aspect to it. We'll bring that headline up. It's an opinion piece and it's entitled "Why I Wouldn't Marry Sussan Ley." Of course, it is a play on words. He's talking about the coalition marriage, but there's certainly a thread that doesn't quite sit right with me. What about you?
Yeah, look, I think that this headline was in poor taste, and clearly the Nightly does too, because now they've taken the headline down or changed the headline. It was there to grab attention, but it was entirely inappropriate. Look, if you want to criticise a politician, whether it be a regular politician or a leader, sure, criticise them for their policy positions, criticise them for their judgment. You might want to criticise them for their performance. You might want to criticise them because that's what the polls are suggesting. But for goodness sakes, it doesn't need to get personal. And I think that this was intentionally provocative and unnecessarily so.
If you look more broadly at Sussan Ley's leadership, and she's had it pretty tough from the beginning, I would say. I think she did a pretty good job over the summer to holding the government's feet to the fire and finally getting that Royal Commission. But it doesn't seem like some within her party, within your party, ever gave her the space that she needed or the authority. And I do think, as a leader, you've got to take authority. So there's some of this that is on her. But more broadly, what is the defence or lack of defence in Sussan Ley tell you about where she sits with that authority at the moment?
Well, I think there is undoubtedly concern about colleagues that even though we had a summer in which the government was held to account for the bad decisions it was making, it was held to account for very poor judgment in its response to Bondi, and withholding that decision to have a Royal Commission demonstrated, I think, a real lack of judgment from the Prime Minister and a lack of empathy and understanding. At the same time, though, it doesn't appear that the public has warmed to the coalition or warmed to the Liberal Party in response to that work of holding the government to account. That's something that we have to respond to. What I want to see most importantly is an opportunity to unify our party, unify the Liberal Party most importantly, because we have a lot of work to do to remind ourselves and those who do support us what it is that we stand for and the values that we hold dear. We need to be able to not just communicate those, but persuade those that our way is the Australian way. And then, most importantly, we have to be able to hold the government to account for the terrible decisions that it's making and provide a credible alternative, because this government is failing Australians. Our living standards are going backwards. Australians are poorer because of decisions that this government is making. And we don't need to look too far to see that. All you need to see is the rise in inflation and the incredible denial by Jim Chalmers that this has anything to do with decisions that the government is making. That just flabbergasts me that he could actually say, no, this is a private sector issue, not a public sector issue.
You can't take credit for
crazy.
Cuts and then try and blame someone else for an impending rate rise. Absolutely. But Jane, it strikes me as I talk to you...
Jim Chalmers has done that a number of times.
Yeah, okay. I'll give you that.
Yes, because Jim Chalmers has done that a number of times. He said, with inflation, it was either, it was overseas factors, or it was supply chain, or it was the coalition's fault. It was always somebody else's fault. He never takes responsibility. But now we have a problem where Australians are seeing a future where they're going to become even poorer. We've seen living standards go backwards, growth stagnating, productivity at a standstill. Well, what is the solution? What is the plan to grow the pie so that all Australians can be more prosperous? Because at this stage, Labor are just talking about cutting up that pie differently.